Pastor Tim, you are muted.
Sorry. Yep. Thank you. I have my allergies this morning, so I've been sneezing. So I'm trying to mute myself when I feel one coming. I was just saying we've been spending a lot of time on the diagramming, just reviewing, looking at that, and I'm glad to hear Chunsi is trying it out for his preparations for his teaching. It's a tool. It'll help as you use it. It's like any tool. When you first begin to use it, sometimes it's difficult or challenging, or you may not have the skill. But as you continue to use the tool, we become better at it, and it becomes a very uh, it can become a very useful uh, for us in the study of the scripture. Because, like Dwayne said, I mean, ultimately, as he was praying, ultimately, we want to do this for Christ's glory. And grammar may not sound like something that would bring honor to Christ necessarily, but if it helps us to better understand His Word, then of course it will grow us in our knowledge of Him. And as Paul said, the goal of our instruction is love. Um, love for God and love for people. So I think diagramming is one of those things that if we put the effort in, that I think it will really help in over time. So yeah, if you guys are ever trying it out, diagramming something, and you aren't sure, you just send me a message. I'd be happy to diagram for you and at least send you mine and what I think, so that's something you can compare against. So if you're studying a particular passage, if you make the attempt, then I will be glad to help you. So you send me your diagram, and then I will send you mine. But I won't just send you my diagram if you haven't done any work. All right, that's my deal. So, but I would be, yeah, happy to help, or if you want to send me yours and ask me for some feedback, be happy to do that. But with that, I want to move from diagramming to the next step here, really, which is what we call textual observations. And this is something we do after the diagramming uh, step, where we then take a step back. Okay, we've done a lot of work to this point on the poem. All right, we've done the poetic analysis, which is, reading through the poem and making observations. It's identifying the structure of the poem, the setting of the poem, parallelism, imagery, poetic devices, summarizing the stanzas of the poem, and then we do the diagram of the poem. So that's where we're breaking down each piece of the poem, each phrase, each clause, and then determining or identifying how those connect to one another. Um, and so by this point in the process, we've put a lot of study into the poem. We should have a pretty good idea of the flow of the poem, the structure, the meaning, the theme, the stanzas. But it's still helpful to, after doing the diagram, to step back and observe a few features in the poem. More on the side of grammar. We will get to word studies, resources in the following steps, but before doing that, it can be helpful to just sort of, after having done the diagram, to go back and look for a few specific aspects, grammatical aspects. Um, what are they? Whoops. Let's see here. Oh, hold on a second. I've got the wrong file open here. Give me a second to fix this. Wait a minute. What happened there? That's really strange. Okay, here we are. Sorry about that. Had the wrong file open. Um, so for textual observations, excuse me, those things that we are looking for are, we're going to go back and look at the verbs. They are especially important. They are what really drive the author's focus. Of course, all the words are important, but the verbs are moving the action of the particular text. All right. So we want to take a special look at the verbs and the characteristics of the verbs. And I'll show you that in a minute. We also want to take a look at the pronouns. Pronouns are very, very, very common in scripture, used a lot. And we often, sometimes we don't think about, when we see a pronoun, we don't think about where does that pronoun go? What's it referring to? And that's an important thing to understand, because just paying attention to that feature. Well, I think you were mentioning, Chunsi, about you're questioning the identity of something in Nahum, the passage you're looking at. And that often happens when we just have pronouns, and you need to ask, where does this pronoun go? What is it speaking of? Who is it pointing to? And I've seen many passages. Well, a classic example, Genesis 3:15, when it talks about the seed of the woman crushing the head of the serpent. And there is some Hebrew manuscript, or some, I don't know if it's Septuagint or Hebrew manuscript, that it says, the seed of the woman. Oh, let me just read the passage. God speaking to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. Well, there was a Latin, that's what it was. It was the Latin translation of the Vulgate, one of the copies of Jerome's Vulgate. Instead of he, it said she will bruise you on the head. And some segments of the Catholic Church took that pronoun literally, that it actually was she, and they think that Mary is the one that will defeat Satan based on that interpretation. In fact, when I was in the Philippines, I go to Cebu quite often for training, and of course, Catholic churches everywhere, but there's one Catholic church on the main street there, and there's this huge statue of Mary. And that's pretty common in Catholic churches, but I mean, really, really big statue. At the bottom of the statue, she's stepping on a serpent. So I don't know if you guys have seen that before, but I noticed it a few years ago, and I was asking a brother there what that was for. And so he explained this to me. I had never heard this before. But yeah, it's a misinterpretation, or a copy error of a pronoun. And you talk about a significant doctrinal error, right? That it's not the Messiah who will defeat Satan, it's Mary, his mother, according to this error. So misunderstanding a pronoun, or in this case, a miscopying of a pronoun, can be a significant impact on interpretation. So we want to be careful with this. Now, obviously, there are they should have caught that error because there's so many other passages that speak of the Messiah conquering his enemies, but nonetheless. So that said, pronouns are a helpful uh, thing to look at. Also, too, we want to go back, consider the conjunctions, and then any conditional or purpose statements. Just kind of take a quick look again. We've already identified those in the diagram, but the textual observation is sort of a way to come back and just identify, find some of the key features in the poem grammatically. But the verbs and the pronouns are the big ones that we want to pay attention to. So let me just do a review of that for you, and then we'll look at Psalm 99 for an example. All right. So with the verbs, there's three main characteristics of the verb that we want to identify. So again, after you've done the diagram, and now you're at this step where you're looking at the textual observations, you want to go back and find all the verbs in your text that you're looking at and identify the three main characteristics of those verbs. And since we're working in English, the characteristics are for the verbs that we want to consider are the tense, the mood, and the voice. Tense, mood, voice. Okay. And remember, there are two classes of verbs. We have verbs of action and verbs of being. Remember, the action verbs are where the verb is describing the subject doing something. I hit the ball, right? She read the book. He ate dinner. They ran to the store. Those are action verbs. They're doing something. We sing in church. Those are all describing the subject doing something. Then we have the verbs of being, which describes the subject is something. I am happy. She was hungry. God is great. Jesus is Lord. She became sick. Okay, these are verbs of being. They're describing the subject, the state of the subject. Verbs of action describe an action the subject is doing. Okay, so keep this in mind. These two classes, two kinds of verbs. And, we have these verbs in Greek as well, Hebrew. There are verbs of action, verbs of being. So this is not just an English thing, but we want to keep this in mind as we're considering the textual observations of the verbs. All right. And so again, there's three characteristics of verbs that we want to consider: the tense of the verb, the mood, and the voice. So verb tense in English. Now, I understand. I just want to be basic about this, simple. There are three basic verb tenses in English: past, present, and future. Now, I understand there's the perfect tense, and there's all these more technical, specific tenses. I understand that, but for the sake of this step, we just really want the simple, basic past, present, or future. So in English, we have tenses that are in reference to time in reference to the speaker, that is. So the speaker or the author will state an action or a state of being in a tense, either as a past, present, or future situation. All right. And so we have these examples, right? For a verb of action, right? Past tense, I kick the ball, right? So the past tense is identified by the ending there, the ed ending. Present tense, I kick the ball. Or future tense, I will kick the ball. All right. Future tense often includes a will or a shall to indicate future tense. A past tense often will be that ed ending there. But again, not for all English verbs, but for many of them. So that's verb of action. Verb of being, past tense, I was happy. Present, I am happy. And then future, I will be happy. All right. So those are just tense indicators. Again, we're not looking for, the more subtle or more technical tenses in English that are there, just focusing on, imperfect, perfect, and some of these other things. Um, we're just focusing on the three simple ones: past, present, and future. Okay, and we'll do some example from the psalm in a minute. Now, verb mood. Now, this one is an important feature in verbs. A mood describes or gives the speaker's what we'd say attitude towards the subject. In English, there are 5 moods. Some would say 6, but I just want us to focus on 5. There's the indicative mood, imperative mood, interrogative mood, and the subjunctive. All right. So there are 5 moods that we're just focusing on 4 of them here. Some would add the conditional, but the way I approach this, I don't include that as well, and I'll show you why in a little bit. Okay, so let's just talk about these moods for a moment. And we did discuss this a while back, but for some of you that haven't been with us the whole time, this is going to be perhaps new, but it's always good to review these things. The indicative mood it makes a statement. All right, indicates reality. It's I read the book. It's just stating a fact or a perceived fact by the speaker or the author. It's just a statement. The imperative mood is a command. So you're not just stating something. I read the book. Imperative is a command. Read the book. So that is the imperative mood. So the speaker is giving a command. Interrogative is a question. Will you read the book? Will I read the book? Did I read the book? Who is reading the book? Okay, so those are all interrogatives, questions, interrogate. All right. Now, a 4th mood is called the subjunctive. And that is there's uncertainty. It's not a statement of fact like an indicative. It's not a command. It's not a question. The idea of the uncertainty is I might read the book. She may read the book. Perhaps I may read the book. So we're not sure the action is going to happen. There's some uncertainty. All right. So here, let me give you, by way of comparison then, different moods. All right. So the indicative mood, a statement of action. I kick the ball. Or for the verb of being, I am happy. That's just making a statement. All right. The imperative mood would be kick the ball, do this, or be happy for the verb of being. The interrogative, again, question, interrogate. Did you kick the ball? Question. Are you happy? Question. And then the subjunctive. I might kick the ball. I may be happy. I'm not sure about it yet. Okay. Or we could take, these are another verb. He preached the word. Indicative. He is blessed. Indicative. Making a statement. Imperative. Preach the word. 2 Timothy 4. Again, be blessed. Interrogative. Did he preach the word? Is he blessed? And then he might preach the word. He may be blessed. All right. So these are the 4 moods we're going to look at. Like I said, conditional, some would add that in English as a conditional mood, where, if I kick the ball. But I think conditional is a little different because it's presenting a condition for the action for another verb. So, for example, um, if I play the game, I will kick the ball. I mean, really, play is a present tense verb here. So it's this, even though someone say, well, that's conditional. Well, no, I mean, I will kick if I play the game. So this, if I play the game, really is dependent, or sorry, I will kick the ball is dependent on if I play the game. So some might say that kick the ball here is conditional because of the statement there. But and that's fine. But when I do this exercise, I already see the conditional statement there in my diagram. So I don't look for that here. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. I'm just letting you know, for some of you that may know that moods, you might recognize there's a fifth mood, but I didn't include it. So again, for the mood, the subjunctive mood, the one that has there's some uncertainty, look for the words in English. We have the word might or may that indicate that uncertainty. Perhaps is another word in English used to indicate uncertainty. So the action could happen, but we're not sure about it. Not like I kick the ball, that's a statement of fact. But I might kick the ball. Well, we don't know yet if that event's going to take place. All right. Any questions on this so far? Mood just again represents the perspective of the speaker or author in relation to what he is writing or saying. So if he is giving the verb in an indicative mood, he's making a statement. If he's giving the verb in an imperative mood, he's making a command. If he's giving the verb in an interrogative mood, he's asking a question. And if he's giving the verb in a subjunctive mood, he's stating something that he's not certain of, that the action is uncertain. It's potential, it's possible. Okay? Questions?
Pastor Tim, one of the things I learned in the tier and also in the Tuesday night classes, it is important because we are reading the Bible in English. It's important to see which are the imperative command, so that we don't miss it and say, "Well, it was only it wasn't really a command." I was just thinking, I'm not sure is that a good example of the Great Commissions in Matthew 28, because I think you preached in the Carmelite Church camp that we mistaken the command is to go, whereas the command is making disciples. Would that be a good example to look at the imperatives?
Yeah, that's a good good question. Um, so that go therefore and make disciples. That's the statement you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in English, the English translation here, right? We have what looks like two commands, correct? We have make disciples, and
Yep.
then we have the go.
Go.
Yeah. And so it looks like he's giving two commands here. First, go. Second, make disciples. And then we have baptizing and teaching, which are um, baptizing and teaching, which are our participles that modify make disciples. But the question is, what do we do with this go? Uh, when we preach this passage, is it two main points, two outline points? Well, if you look at I think the translation here has a note. Yes, notice the translation adds or having gone. You guys see that?
Yep.
Um,
Like aorist.
it's a participle. Stands for Greek aorist participle. So, but it's translated like a command. But remember, a command, a participle is not a main verb. It's a modifying verb, right? Baptizing, teaching, those are participles. They modify something else. So here's when it says go, that would stand. That'd be a regular verb. That stand alone. That's a command. Go, do this. So the we want to understand is that really a command? And so if we were to go to, so we have the footnote there by the translation. We could also go to the interlinear. Chunsi mentioned that a little moment ago. So let's go. Let's see what the interlinear shows us about this. You know what? So we'll head to Matthew. Maybe if my computer will comply here. Okay. Matthew 28. And we'll hit interlinear here. And then go down verse 18. So we hear, so coming to them, Jesus spoke to them, saying, has been given to me all authority in heaven and on earth. And then here's verse 19. It says here, having gone, and if we look at the having gone, and if we look at what's underneath there, it tells us it's an aorist participle. Now, if we go over to disciple or make disciples, this is an aorist imperative. Okay, so it is a command. Make disciples is an imperative. It is a command. But go is actually having gone or going. So that's a significant difference. How does that change our understanding of what Jesus is saying here? Why is this important, you think? What would be the difference, I guess, between going or having gone, make disciples, versus go and make disciples? Any thoughts?
Maybe I can share how uh, I think I've done this terrible thing to inflict guilt on people because by stressing that the command is to go, and that seems to be the main idea was to go and to be missionary. And in fact, many years ago, I think I'm not sure, Pastor Tim, you know the late Keith Green.
Yeah.
Yeah, in one of his songs, he says that Jesus commanded us to go. And in the interlude of his song, actually, I love Keith Green's his songs. In his interlude, he actually said that Jesus commanded us to go, but we feel so called to stay. And then he says that going is the norm, staying is the exception. So it honed on the word go, whereas here going, which is was it an aorist participle? It is an aorist participle, right? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is the idea is that having gone or going is assumed in our daily lives and not necessarily means that I must be missionary going to Algeria or somewhere, right? It is assumed that in us going about as part of our witness that we are to make disciples as the main focus, the making disciples.
Yeah, it's just what we do. It's what every Christian does. He is a disciple. He's going all the time. Yeah, like you said, it isn't. It can be personal where you would go to, a foreign country, but
Yeah.
definitely we're going. It's normal. It's what we do.
Yeah.
You don't have to be commanded to do it. You just, it's automatic. You tell people about Jesus. They all need to know.
Someone suggested there was an American friend of mine, a preacher, that's passed away anyway. So he says that it's actually also a gerund. He said, in your going about, make disciples, baptize and teach. So the going there is a gerund. It's in your going. That means you can be going abroad. I mean, the daily work and wherever you are in the marketplace and so on. So that was suggested.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to keep in mind here. So this is a really good example to consider. So thank you for bringing it up, Yichai. Let me just first look at diagramming what the difference would be. All right, so if we were diagramming if it's an imperative, right, we have go. That's a standalone, imperative command. You go. That's an independent clause. All right, and make disciples. That's a second. So we would have two points here, right? And then how we make disciples, baptizing and teaching. Okay, so that would be how it looks for that English translation. But if we take go as a participle, going, or as you're going, or having gone, and by the way, the word and, did you guys notice? We can go back to there's no and here in the text. It's just having gone, therefore, disciple all the nations. See that? So, and in the English translation was added. Okay. Now, what's interesting, I find this interesting that actually normally the LSB italicizes the words it adds, but they didn't do it this time. If we go to the actual, let me pull up the Logos again. Right? Go, notice the and here, not italicized. Even though it's not in the original Greek. Same with the New American Standard. They didn't do that. Now, I think I know the reason why, and I'll tell you in a minute. But in any case, let's go back to this diagram for a second. So if we take the second example, we're going, we translate it more literally as a participle. Then what we have is make disciples is the main idea. How do we do that? 3 ways: by going, baptizing, and teaching. So now going is a supporting idea. Make disciples, or disciple, is the main idea. That's the only command. That's the only main verb here. And then the participles, we have one participle before the main verb, going, and then 2 participles after, baptizing and teaching. So it's like Dwayne said, basically. This is just our way of life. So as you are going, make disciples will be the idea. As you go about, and whether that's going to the store, going to your job, or going to another country. These are all, as you are going, make disciples would be the idea. Or some might take it, having gone. So there could be as you are going, or having gone. Having gone would be more the idea of the intent is that you're going in order to make disciples. So having gone, make disciples. But I think that's because the make disciple, and this, let me give you a technical statement. If you don't understand it, don't worry about it. But some of you might be helpful. Make disciples is in the aorist tense, it said, okay? And going is also in the aorist tense. All right. And so what that likely means is as you are going is the more likely translation because both are in the same tense. If make disciples was in the present tense, then going would probably be having gone. So it's just it'd be a specific Greek grammatical thing. But since both are in the same tense here, both are in the aorist, then what's likely is it's an action happening at the same time. And so it is having gone. Okay, but if that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it. So my main point here, though, is this. If it's two commands, then that's two statements. And yeah, so we have Keith Green, who is, one of my favorite older singers. I really appreciate his conviction. But yeah, to say that we've been commanded to go overseas or mission would probably be taking this a little too strongly, too far. If it was an imperative, then I think he has a good case. All right, but it's not an imperative. It's not a command. Make disciples is a command. And as Dwayne reminded us, this is our calling. This is what we are to do. No matter who we are or where we are, if you're a believer, we're called to make disciples. And I think that the participle indicates this. So it's as you are going, you do this. Now, what I did do, though, is I took a look. This particular construction is almost an idiomatic expression in Greek. That is, for example, if I were to tell you, go and read the text, or go pick up that book, or stand up and read the text. Really, the focus is read the text. That's my main instruction. The initial statement is just, that's part of the main instruction. And if you go and look in the New Testament, you'll see this kind of, there's this go and do, right? I think, let me see, what's coming to my mind is in John 8. Yeah. Here, let me pull the John 8, when Jesus tells the woman, go and sin no more, or from now on, sin no more, right? The main idea here is sin no more. He's telling her, now go and sin no more. So it's kind of an idiomatic expression. Go and do this. To do this is the main idea, the main command. Now let me look and see actually if this is if it's a participle here. Now here it's in the form of an imperative in this case. I have to look again. This is something I looked at a while back, but I noticed there were a few examples of this elsewhere in the New Testament where it was a participle followed by an imperative. So, but I don't think here when Jesus says go and make disciples is the focus here. As you are going, be the idea. So go there is an important word. We don't ignore it, but it's not to be elevated to the same level as make disciples, because grammatically it's not a command. It's a participle. It's supporting the command. And so as I teach it, it's more, I don't give emphasis. I give emphasis on baptizing and teaching as how you make disciples, but the go is really just as you are going, make disciples. This is part of your life. This is your ongoing instruction to carry out. All right. Thoughts or questions on that? Or comments?
Thank you, Pastor Tim. If you can show the word file on the block diagramming on Matthew 28:19, I think the second one, which we think is what it is the author intent, it makes it so much clearer visually on a visual basis that the emphasis is making disciples. By doing block diagramming, it's kind of you invent the going as a aorist participle, the baptizing and the teaching. It makes it clearer so that we won't get confused ourselves and confusing the congregation as well.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
does it read in the like in Mandarin or in Malay? What's the or Burmese? I'm curious. Is it written as a separate like command? Go make disciples, or did they translate it differently?
So, Pastor Tim, in Burmese, tendo di tua yue, that means two commands.
Okay.
Tua is go, and yue is kind of preposition in Burmese, then make disciple. So two commands in one sentence, like English.
Okay. So it matches the
Those
English
two
translation.
go and make disciple, those two are connected with Burmese preposition. That means two commands.
Got it. And then
Yeah.
what about baptizing and teaching? Are those also given as commands or in the
I must say yes. That is separate sentence. Making baptizing and
yeah.
teaching, they are separate sentence. Also, like a command, another command.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. What about Mandarin or Malay?
In Malay, it's okay. They separate the sentences in the sense that verse 19 says all power is given to me. Go as such, go and make disciples. Full stop. Baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Full stop. Teach them, to obey all things that I've commanded you.
Okay.
It's three different sentences. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's also all commands.
Yeah. Same as Burmese.
Interesting. So baptize and teach are also in the form of a command in Malay.
Yes.
And Burmese. Interesting. Okay. What about in the Mandarin? Did you look that one up?
Yeah, just look at it. Similar in Mandarin as well. That basically it says, therefore you must go to all people and to disciple them and to disciple them, to baptize them and to teach them. The reason is I just Googled as well. Apparently, there's no Chinese equivalent of the English participles in the grammar. So it cannot be conveyed because there's no participle equivalent in Chinese.
Right. That's right.
So is also then are baptizing and teaching at the same level as make disciples?
Yep. And
Wow.
also the meaning is that you must go, you know,
Okay.
which is and I guess the Chinese probably is based on the earlier English translation. It's interesting. I just learned for first time in my life. There's no Chinese equivalent of English participles.
No,
Wow.
they don't have English grammar structure in Chinese.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. So it would look like those three translations then would look like this. Obviously wouldn't be in English, but I don't know. But just to make the English equivalent, so this would be the English equivalent for Burmese.
Mm.
Now notice the difference here. Okay, let me try to. So let's do this. This is the literal. All right, this one is the English, the common English translation.
Mm.
Okay, I don't know why. What's it doing over there? And then we have the English equivalent for those three translations. All right, notice the difference here. So if they're more of the idea of a command, see what has happened now? Now it's 4 commands, 4 separate instructions. And baptize and teach could be understood now as something different or distinct from make disciples. Obviously, they'd be related, but here as participles, or I would say, yeah, so it's literal. Baptizing and teaching and going as participles in the Greek and in English, those are subordinating ideas. They're supporting ideas, right? Again, participles never are, they always modify. Okay, and so in the Greek and in English, they'd clearly be supporting the main idea, make disciples. They'd be telling us how. Whereas if you have go, make disciples, baptize, teach, you now have 4 equivalent instructions that could focus on different things. Right? Go, you need to go out, leave. Right? Make disciples, second command. Third, baptize. And then fourth, teach. So disciples could be understood as a different category. Now, I'm sure that most would say these are all related to one another. I understand that. But just looking at the grammar, these are rather significant differences between these three. All right. The second one, the more literal, that matches the Greek, that gives emphasis on the correct, there's one command, there's one focus here. And then there's supporting ideas, how to carry out that command. Those are important, no question. But it doesn't elevate baptize, teach, and go to the same level as make disciples. And that's what's happening here. And even here, go, make disciples. So now go is being elevated in importance as a second imperative. Okay? And I think that's rather significant. By the way, this is the same thing in Cebuano, one of the Philippines dialects, languages. It's the same like this. I think in several languages, Yuchai, there isn't really a participle equivalent. So I don't know how you convey that idea. How would you do that in Mandarin? Convey that it's supporting.
I just checked again just now in Google. There is a Chunsi will know that there's a Chinese word called 这, which can be added to the word baptizing and teaching to indicate that it is a participle.
Oh, okay.
But somehow it wasn't. In the translation, it was baptizing and teaching as a verb.
What's the word again?
这一边做这
这
yeah.
这乐
Not here. The 做这.
这
Okay.
I was thinking, Pastor Tim, as you were saying, a relatable example to distinguish or to hone in on this is like the statement, he eats his dinner by sitting and sipping water and talking to his mom. But the moment we go and put the sipping water and talking to his mom as the same level as eating his dinner, or he eats his dinner, we have confusing the thing. The main thing is he eats his dinner. We are not telling people you must eat your dinner by sitting, you must eat your dinner by sipping water, you must eat your dinner by talking to your mom. And that is like not sharp in its original authorial intent.
Yeah. And that's all we're trying to do here is, the author will express, make a statement, and he'll give priority to certain things in that statement by the grammar he uses. So if it's a main verb, like make disciples, then we know that, okay, that's the main idea. It's really, we're back to this, when we went into diagramming, there's a main idea being presented and supporting ideas. And so we just want to follow the author's direction. What is he giving as his main idea? And what are his supporting ideas? And we do that, in Greek and English, it's done by what we call these finite or main verbs, and then other forms like participles. All right, participles are supporting ideas. Phrases, dependent clauses, those are supporting ideas. Independent clauses are typically, a main thought. So when Jesus says make disciples, baptizing, teaching, going, main idea, make disciples. How do I know that? Because that's the imperative in the sentence. That's the main verb, the finite verb. And then going, baptizing, teaching, I know those are supporting because of the form of the verb. They're participles. The speaker, in that case, this case, Jesus, did not use, he used participles intentionally because he's conveying this. These are supporting ideas. Make disciples, main idea. And so all we're trying to do is just follow what the original author or speaker in this case intended. But when we have go, make disciples, baptize, teach, there's a change happening now. Now we have 4 finite verbs, which communicates 4 main ideas. Now they're related. They'd all be surrounding the idea of, carrying out the Christ's mission to, make believers. But the nature of how to do that is a little less clear because now we have 4 main thoughts. Go, make disciples, baptize, teach. As opposed to make disciples. How do we do that? Going, baptizing, teaching. So our goal really, we're back to this key hermeneutic. What did the author intend to say? And one of the ways he conveys that is the kind of grammar he uses, the kinds of verbs he uses. or prepositions or conjunct, all of those other things. But this is why, this diagramming and now doing these observations, this is important, because all we're trying to do is simply, in Scripture, God has communicated to us, and he communicates to us through language. And he uses the human author, in conjunction with the divine author, uses the grammar words that are familiar to, in common with, the original audience. Why? Because that's the manner in which the truth is being communicated. And so he will use the grammar of that language and the words that are common in that language to communicate his truth. So when you're studying Nahum, you're looking at, it's a Hebrew, right, language, and Nahum written in Hebrew, and so he's using that language and Hebrew words because his original audience that's their receptor language. So he's going to follow the rules of grammar, and what he will use Hebrew grammar and style and words to make emphasis where he wants to emphasize, to supporting ideas where he wants to support. So he'll use that language to do that. We're studying Matthew 28. That's a Greek text. Or we've been looking at English translations. So we're just trying to follow the author's lead. That's all we're doing here. And the author's using grammar, the grammar common to himself and his audience. And we're just trying to get back to that. All right. We don't want to, that's what the Holy Spirit inspired text is. And we don't want to change it. We don't want to misunderstand it. And then there are times, Matthew's one example, I think I've pointed this out, you guys know this, where Jesus uses grammar incorrectly here. But we see that, right? If we go back to baptizing them in the name, singular, of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Now, name should be plural here. Right? If we're talking about three different people, then it should be names of. Right? So that's a that's grammatically incorrect. But it's theologically correct, right? He could have used names. That would have been theologically accurate as well. They are three persons. But name, here's a very subtle but powerful indication of the oneness of the Trinity. All right. But grammatically, if you're paying attention, you say, well, wait a minute. No. That should be names. But so this isn't an issue of inerrancy. It's still inerrant text. And so grammatical differences or errors are not does not make the text errant. It's still an inerrant text because Jesus intentionally did that. Because it's theologically accurate. Okay, so paying attention to grammar here can actually reveal some pretty deep insights, right? If you're looking at that, thinking, oh, name should be in the plural, but it isn't. Why is that? Well, Jesus didn't make a mistake here. He actually intended to communicate the triune nature of God just by that grammatical distinction. Okay? So paying attention to these details is an important part of our Bible study. Questions on that? I mean, to me, that's a rather significant observation.
Mm.
And I'm not the first one to see that, okay? I'm just copying someone else. Someone else taught me this. But that's a significant detail. Theologically, very powerful. So, just following the author's lead or the speaker's lead. That's all we're trying to do here. And so one of the ways that helps us do that after we do the diagramming is to go back now and let's take a look at the verbs and see what they are. What is their tense? What is their mood? What is their voice? All right. Also, too, because if you have verbs that are like looking at the verb, make disciples, that's a command. Now, if it had said Jesus made disciples, that would just be a statement, an indicative. Now, there's a big difference, right, between an indicative statement and an imperative. All right, what's the difference? Somebody tell me between indicative and imperative.
Oh, imperative is eat your dinner. Yeah. Indicative, he eats dinner.
And so, yeah, when you're studying a text, if it's an imperative, it's, okay, this is something I'm being commanded to do.
Yeah.
Or the person in the story was commanded, right? So here, make disciples. Not an option. It's a command. Preach the word. Be holy, for I am holy. Right? These are commands. So they're given this is something that you must do, that I must do. Okay, so it's important to see that distinction. Or if it's a future tense verb versus past tense. Or if it's well, here, let's get to those then. Let's go back to our notes here. All right. There's one other element. So we have tense, we have mood, and we have what's called voice. Okay. Voice tells us the relationship of the subject to the verb. In other words, is the subject doing the action? Or is the action being done to the subject? Okay, so an active voice means that the subject performs the action. All right. A passive voice is the actions being done to the subject. So, for example, active voice, I hit the ball. Subject I is the doing the action here. Philip preached a sermon. Philip is doing the action. Okay. Chun-Si ate lunch. Chun-Si is doing the action. So those are all active. The subject is acting. Now, passive, the action's being done to the subject. That's what that word passive means, by the way. You're not doing something. Something's being done to you. All right. So the ball was hit. See, the ball is not doing the hitting. Rather, it's being done to it. The ball was hit. Now, if I had said, right, I hit the ball, okay, I is the subject here, hit is verb, ball is the object in this sentence. But in a passive construction, The ball is the subject, was hit. Okay, now this is describing the same activity, a ball being hit. But the grammatical structure is what we're focusing on here. So again, an active, subject, I, verb, hit. In this case, the ball is the object in that sentence. In the passive construction, the ball is my subject, was hit is my verb. Okay, now I could have added by me. Now there's a preposition there. By me would be a phrase indicating who hit the ball. But again, we're looking at the grammar here. And why this matters, I'll give you an example in a minute, passage. Okay, so active, subject doing the action, passive, actions being done to the subject. Now, if it's a verb of being, it would be something like this. The active voice would be I am happy. Now, this is not an action. It's a state of being. But passive would be I was made happy. Active is I am the one sort of causing my happiness, where the passive is I was made happy by something else. Okay? Questions on that? Let me give you a verse that this shows the importance of recognizing this. Ephesians 6:18. In fact, let me just do this. I will. Not 5:18. Let me just put it here. Okay. Do not get drunk with wine. So there's, by the way, what's that? Do not get drunk. That's the verb.
Imperative.
What is the mood? Imperative, indicative, interrogative, subjunctive.
I would say imperative.
Yep, it's imperative. Do not get drunk. How? With wine. I'll just diagram this for you. Why? For that is dissipation.
Mm.
And then now, but, so here's a second, remember, but, coordinating conjunction. So it's going to be filled with the Spirit is, the be filled is a independent clause because it's matching do not get drunk. All right, with the Spirit, that's how. I want to focus on this be filled. Okay, what is the tense of this? This is a verb. What is the tense of be filled? Shilong, you want to give me that? What's the tense?
Actually, it's present tense.
Yes. And what is the mood? Indicative, imperative, interrogative?
Is it imperative?
Yes, it's a command. Be filled. And what is the voice?
It's actually the passive voice.
Yeah, notice that word be. So this is this is an imperative. It's a command for something to be done to you. Right? Shulong is exactly correct. Good job in parsing. It's a present tense, so it's now. Do this now. The mood is imperative, so it's a command. He didn't say, I was filled with the Spirit, or he will be filled. You will be filled with the Spirit. No, it's be filled. Command. You be filled. That's the idea, right? The command. You be filled with, or really by, I think is a better translation there. Okay. And then the voice. Passive. So again, it doesn't say you fill with the Spirit, okay, that would be active. It says be filled by the Spirit. All right. Very important distinction. I don't, fill myself by the Spirit. The Spirit fills me. Right? You guys with me? Okay. Spirit does the filling. Whatever filling means. I think the idea is to be under his control. But be filled is a command, but it's passive. So it's saying you be filled, use the subject, okay? But you, in this case here, right? So you is my subject, be filled is the verb. So the subject is not doing the action. The action, be filled, being done to the subject. And here we're told by whom? By the Spirit. So this is a rather interesting statement then. It's a command for me to have something done to me by someone else. How does that work? Right? So I'm not the one, so it's not saying here you pray and call for the Holy Spirit to fill you. I'm not doing the action. Action is being done to me. I need to put myself in a position to be filled by the Spirit, is the idea. There is something I must do to place myself in a position to be filled. I don't do the filling. Holy Spirit does that. But yet, there's this command for me to be filled. So then the question becomes, well, what do I do then to put myself in that position to be filled? So there is some command here. There is something I must do. But yet the actual verb be filled is not the thing I'm doing. That's being done by the Holy Spirit. So by seeing this voice, it forces me to now think about, well, what is it that I do? How do I be filled by the Spirit? How does this action take place upon me? The Spirit's the one doing it, but why is it given to me as a command then? He didn't say, may you be filled by the Spirit. Okay? Or he didn't say, you will be filled by the Spirit. Or you are filled by the Spirit. He says, be filled by the Spirit. This is a very important distinction. So then it forces us to ask or think about, okay, well, how does that happen? What does this mean? How do I obey this command? All right, so simply noticing, identifying the voice of the verb in this particular passage really opens up, makes us now consider, okay, well, how do I carry this command out? What does this really mean? Okay. And that to figure that out, you have to kind of study the context of the letter, this idea of being filled by the Spirit. What does that mean? We won't get into all those details, but it basically has to do with, are you putting yourself in a position for the Spirit to control your life? It's interesting. Galatians 5, Paul says, walk by the Spirit. And in that case, the command is active. You walk. He didn't say be walk, or he said you walk by the Spirit. So there he's saying something a little different. Walking by the Spirit is not the same as being filled by the Spirit. Okay? So questions on this. So again, my point being, carefully examining the verbs is important. It will reveal insights into. Now, I don't know in your languages, your first languages, is there an active or passive voice? I mean, like in Burmese or Malay, or there's not in Burmese. So how?
No active voice or passive voice, both in Burmese or neither Burmese nor Kitchen.
Oh, so how would you communicate the subject, like doing the action or the action being done to the subject? Is there a way to know that? Maybe like Ephesians 6:18. What does it say there in the Burmese?
Yeah. So in Ephesians 5:18 in Burmese,
Yeah,
it
5:18. Yeah.
right, yeah, 5:18, it's simply say, do not get drunk, not in a passive way, not in a passive tense, just simply do not get drunk.
Which is the same in English. It's an active.
Yeah.
But then what is the next say? The be filled. How does that read?
Yeah, the next sentence is 但身到温人到你必须到 so that means you feel like something, you fill yourself with the Holy
Oh,
Spirit.
okay.
Not you or be filled, not be filled. Like something, you feel yourself. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a pretty big difference.
Yes.
What's the Mandarin and Malay versions look like?
Oh, the Chinese language have the active and passive by adding a word before the verb. Yeah.
So there is a
So
way to tell.
yeah. It's the word is like by, you are feel by.
Okay. Is it also given in the form of a command? Like,
Well, from the Chinese word itself, it will be a command, but we can't. Yeah, it will be a command. Yeah. Just got to check that as well. Come think about it. Just wonder, Daniel, how's a Malay like or Bahasa? Right?
you with us, Daniel? We lost him. Yeah, that's interesting. If we go, like I say, if we go, there is in the Greek text. I can. Let me just take us there. I'm curious.
Mm.
Right. Do not be drunk with wine. Oh, interesting. Which is dissipation, but here's the command and the construction that this ending here. That's um, those last few letters indicate it's passive. In Greek, there is passive voice, active and passive voices. And this is in spirit here. Whoops. But yeah, so this verb, plerao, is the verb meaning fill. Plerutha is be filled. Okay, so it is expressed as a passive verb in the Greek, meaning same idea as in English, the actions being done to the subject. And I think some have, misinterpreted this verse and has the idea of you be filled by the Spirit. So they think I'm the one that has to initiate this. Whereas, no, I need to be doing some certain things that put me in a position to be filled, but it's the Spirit that's going to do it on his choice, his decision, his action. All right. So, any case, so this is just, I think, an important example of, the voice can be a significant issue in interpreting the text. Other thoughts or questions? Now, in Greek, there is a third voice in Greek. It's called the middle voice. Oops. English only has active and passive, but Greek also adds a third. And I'm just bringing this up to you so you know about it. It's called the middle voice. Okay. Middle voice, the subject is doing the action to itself or for its own benefit. Okay. So, for example, when you have a verb in Greek that is in the middle voice, that means the idea or the understanding is he's doing this action for himself or to himself for his benefit. Now, in English, we can represent that idea by in this way. Okay. Let's say that the sentence is, I gave a gift. Okay. That's active, right? Subject, I, verb, gave, gift, object. Passive voice would be the gift. See, in this case, the gift is now the subject. The gift was given. All right. Sorry, object, verb. The middle voice, I, subject, gave, verb. Now myself, which technically here, right? I gave myself, that we call in English, and that's the indirect object. But actually, it does convey the idea of a middle voice. I gave the gift to myself for my benefit, for me. But English, the verb gave here, we don't say is a middle voice verb. We don't have middle voice in English. But sometimes in English, we convey or represent that idea by including this, what we call the pronoun here. All right. So I'm just making you aware of that. When you parse the verbs in English, you won't have a middle voice, but you might see this pronoun here, myself, yourself, themselves. That could indicate that idea. But in Greek, there is a middle voice that allows us to note this form. Let me give you a good example in Hebrew. Hebrew doesn't have what we call a middle voice, but there's a certain type of verb conjugation that expresses this idea of, it's called a reflexive, where you do it to yourself. Let me take you to a common passage where we see it and how it helps us to understand the idea better. So Psalm 73, one of my favorites. This is the psalm that has that great statement, verse 25. Whom have I in heaven but you? Beside you I desire nothing on earth, right? My heart and my flesh may fail, but God is the rock of my heart, my portion forever. Wonderful passage. Well, what's interesting, if you look at this psalm, the focus of the psalm is on Asaph. He wrote it, and he's describing a time when he almost walked away from the faith. My feet almost stumbled. My steps almost slipped. He's describing a time in his life where he was so discouraged, he almost just gave up. And he gives the reason was because he was envious of the boastful. He was looking at the prosperity of the wicked. Sorry, something happened here. Okay. He was looking at that the wicked were prospering. They were doing well. And he just talks about they don't have health problems. They're rich. They can do whatever they want. They say whatever they want. And they suffer no consequences. So he's, this isn't true, but this is what he's thinking. Right? They say, how does God know? Right? They just speak these words of arrogance. These are the wicked, always at ease. They've increased in wealth. Well, that's not true, but that's what he's feeling. Then he says this, so in vain I have kept my heart pure and washed my hands in innocence. I've been stricken all day long and reproved every morning. So he's describing here like his thinking was, I almost just gave up because I looked at the wicked. They were doing well. They weren't having problems. And here I am, trying to be holy and serve the Lord. And I just have pain and trouble and suffering. What's the point? This is his idea. This is his attitude. And then notice what he says in verse 21. And here's where I want to draw your attention to. When my heart was embittered and I was pierced within. Notice. What is the verb tense of was embittered?
Passive.
It's passive. Notice I was pierced. That word was tells us passive. My heart was embittered. I was pierced within. So the question is, what embittered his heart? What pierced him? Now, in the Hebrew text, the Hebrew verb is actually reflexive, meaning he embittered himself. He pierced himself. Okay, so these here, was embittered, is not technically, it's passive in English, but it's reflexive in Hebrew. So it's the idea like a middle voice. I did this to myself. All right? And then as a result, I was senseless and ignorant like an animal, right? So he realized this is my problem. The problem is me. This is a significant turning point in the psalm. He recognized he was the one making himself bitter. He was the one causing the pain in his heart. This jealousy, it had to do with the fact he was jealous. He was discontent. So recognizing, verse 21, just simply recognizing the mood of the verb, the voice of the verb, really reveals to us the what's really going on here. That he recognizes I was the problem. I embittered myself as I looked out and I became jealous and envious, discontent. Then I caused my heart to feel this way. I pierced myself with the suffering and the discouragement. Okay. So in the English, they show up as passive. And in a sense they are, but it's really more this idea of the reflexive, that I'm doing this, I did this to myself. Okay. So there is in the original language is the ability to kind of see this reflexive or this middle idea in Greek and in Hebrew, but in English, not so much. So really, if I had translated this, I would have said, when my heart embittered itself, or when I pierced myself. I think that would be a more accurate way to express the original here. This middle idea, middle voice idea. So I'm bringing this up so just that you're paying attention. So I'm looking at these verbs and seeing just these, they may seem subtle or small distinctions. They actually reveal a very important biblical truth. For example, Ephesians 5:18, be filled. That's a very significant difference than you fill. Or here in Psalm 73, I was embittered as opposed to, or my heart was embittered as opposed to my heart embittered itself. That's a very key difference theologically here, because it explains the problem is not my circumstances around me. Those did not embitter my heart. The problem is actually my heart itself. I embittered my heart. Okay, that's why that's an important difference. Right? It's like you make me so angry. Well, no, you don't make me angry. Maybe you did something that then tempted me to be angry, but I made myself angry. That's the idea. Or in this case, even if the wicked were prospering around him, that wasn't the problem for Asaph. The problem was how he responded to that. Problem was his own heart. Okay. Any questions about that psalm or thoughts or comments or anything we've covered to this point? Well, I had hoped to be further along here and get to the Psalm 99 example, but we can do that next time. I really wanted to spend a little time on the verbs because it's so important to see what's going on with these verbs. So that takes us a little bit beyond the diagram. The diagram, we would just note the verb, right? I was embittered. My heart was embittered. We would see the verb there. But this next step, we actually now look at that verb more carefully and say, okay, what kind of verb is this? What is it doing here? That reveals more insight into what the author is saying. Like we discussed with make disciples, baptizing and teaching, going, knowing the nature of those verbs and recognizing, well, there's really only one main verb there, make disciples. The others are verbols. They're participles. So they don't have mood, voice, and a tense. They have a tense and they have a voice, but not a mood. Participles are not indicative, imperative, interrogative. They don't have that characteristic. That's why they're not regular verbs. They're verbols. They look like a verb, but they're modifying actions. Okay. Well, I think I've tortured you enough with this grammar tonight, but I hope it's been helpful. If there is no other questions or comments, I'm going to ask if Fu Wei can close us in prayer.